You're on CYInterview.
I'm Chris Shandek, featured columnist Jay Billstein is with me. Today on CYInterview, we welcome one of the winningest game show contestants in American history on Jeopardy. Brad Rutter has won over $5 million. He currently is part of the new TV show, The Chase, airing Thursdays on ABC. Brad, thanks so much for being on CYInterview this morning. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for joining us. Really enjoy the new game show that you and the other Jeopardy champions are partaking in. So let's just, to begin, a few months back we lost the one and only host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek, being one of the most accomplished contestants in Jeopardy history. What are your memories of Mr. Trebek?
Well, the thing that always stuck with me was just how much he cared about the show and the actual game. And the fact that he was always rooting for the contestants, and I think that always came through on TV, and I think that's a big reason why he was so popular. You know, you could tell he took his job really seriously, but yet he still did it with a little twinkle in his eye, and he really wanted the contestants to do well.
Well, thank you for that analysis. I think that that's very well stated. You know, being one of the most accomplished contestants on Jeopardy in history, were you just always interested in knowing about a variety of different things? What do you credit your success on that show?
Yeah, I think ever since I can remember, really, since I was a little kid, I've always just enjoyed knowing things. And then if I would come across interesting facts, somehow they would stick in my head. So I really do think you have to be wired for trivia in a certain way. But also, speaking of Alex, when Jeopardy came back on the air with him in '84, I think it was, I was a little kid, but my parents had been big fans of the old Art Fleming show, so we started watching Jeopardy every night. And by the time I was in high school, I thought, well, I should probably try to get on the show sometime.
What advice do you have for people who want to be successful on game shows in general?
Well, I think my highest leverage advice is that remember that it's a TV show. So when you are at an audition, you are auditioning to be on a TV show. Like you already took the test for Jeopardy or The Chase or whatever it is. They know that you know enough to be on the show. Now they're looking for personality and whether you can take direction and a bunch of that stuff. So I've run into people like I've auditioned for Jeopardy 12 times and I still haven't been on. I'm like, well, you're probably the reason you haven't been on probably is you haven't really mastered the TV audition part of it. So that's what you should work on.
Having a chance to watch your new show, The Chase, I feel like the show is Jeopardy meets Who Wants to Be a Millionaire meets Win Ben Stein's Money. Do you think that is a good description? Tell me about the concept.
Yeah, in fact, that's how I've been describing it at times. So, yes, I would say that's a great way to describe it. So we take a team of 3 contestants who have never met before. They're really good amateur trivia players, you know, the kind that would probably win their local pub quiz most nights. And they team up to face off against either me or Ken Jennings or James Holzhauer, one of the Jeopardy GOATs, in a sort of trivia race. And if they get to the end without whoever's chasing them that night catching them, they get to split 6 figures. Although sometimes there's only one person left, so maybe they could take it all home themselves. It's kind of involved to explain, but it makes a lot of sense when you actually watch the show.
Probably the most challenging game show that I've seen in a long time. This is not obviously easy for the contestants, and whatever they win is well earned. You can definitely see that.
Yeah, and you know, if you're going to be taking home 6 figures, we want to make you earn it. So if you've gone through that gauntlet and beaten one of us, I think you can definitely say that you deserve it.
So what has it like been working with your fellow Jeopardy champions, Ken Jennings and James Holzhauer, on this show?
It's been a lot of fun. I've known Ken for 15 years, so you know we've always gotten along well. And then James sort of slotted right into that when we first started hanging out at the GOAT tournament last year. But the cool thing about this, from that standpoint, was that you know, before when we've all been together, you know, it's been friendly, but we've been trying to beat each other and competing against each other. And now we're sort of all on the same team. So, you know, we still all want to be the quote-unquote best chaser, so there's still some competitiveness, but it's a lot more relaxed.
So knowing these fellow Jeopardy champions, have you learned anything new about how to increase your knowledge bank from either of these guys?
When James was first on Jeopardy, he was talking about this fantastic idea he had that's so simple that I can't believe somebody hadn't thought of it before, is that, so when he wanted to learn about stuff that he didn't really know a lot about, he would get children's books from the library about them, which is just a genius idea, because the thing about Jeopardy is you have to know a wide variety of topics, but the knowledge you have to have about those topics doesn't go more than a couple inches deep. So children's books are perfect. You get a children's book out on, the Marquis de Lafayette, and that'll definitely give you all the highlights of his life, and that's all really you need to know if there was ever going to be a clue about him on Jeopardy. So I thought that was really smart.
Very interesting. The Chase airs Thursdays on ABC. Jay?
Good morning, Brad. Very happy to have you here with us on CYInterview.
Nice to be here.
As you were talking, I was thinking, and I'm thinking about the times we're in 2021, and we kind of live in an age of the death of the generalist. Everybody, in every different kind of profession, is a specialist. I think back, go back 50 years ago. If you were playing a sport, golf, tennis, soccer, football, whatever it was, and you hurt your foot, you may go to your GP, your general practitioner. And general practitioner look at your foot, may not even take an x-ray, and, prescribe whatever he prescribed. Rest it, elevate it, put an ace bandage on. Later on, everybody started going to the orthopedic doctor. Then after that, all of a sudden, you come to today, hey, listen, I've got a great toe guy, right? You hurt your big toe? You're not going to you're not going to a GP, you're not going to an orthopedist, you're going to a toe specialist. And I wonder if we've lost something where this kind of ethic of having general knowledge has given away to people who are super specialized, and does that somehow do a disservice to society in some way?
Well, I will say it's a lot easier to make money with super specialized knowledge. There's only a few people who have managed to make any kind of living off of general knowledge in the past few years. I'm fortunate enough to be one of them. But it's sort of the way Western civilization has been going since the 18th century at least. That's the sort of the law of comparative advantage, is your time is better spent doing something that only you can do, as opposed to, something that just about anybody can do. And, I think that's sort of the definition of general knowledge. It's like a lot of people know it. Not everybody knows, across the spectrum. But, the other thing, too, is that, sort of know-it-alls are going extinct as well with search engines and things like that. So, whereas 30 years ago, you'd like to have a guy like me around in every bar to settle bets, now everybody has their phones, and it's just instantaneous.
Or they sit at home and say, Alexa, who was?
Sure.
But I wonder if that is damaging to society as a whole. I don't know if it was Socrates. It was certainly some philosopher who said the body of all knowledge is one. When we lose the ability to have broad knowledge, and when we're overly specialized and we just end up like a cog in a machine, does it perhaps lead to specialized knowledge being inappropriately utilized because it doesn't have that context of general knowledge?
Maybe, yeah, that's a good point. I'm just usually shocked by seeing that references that I would expect most people to get just fly over people's heads, and these are intelligent people that are well educated. So maybe, and that's just, I guess, maybe the surface level of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, I find it a little bit off-putting. There was a time where people claimed when it came to school, hey, no matter what you do, first start with a broad liberal arts education, and from there specialize, because it was in the face of a broad liberal arts education that people would come to understand how we as a civilization have gotten to where we are. Do you think in some way, perhaps in some small way, that game shows that test for general knowledge keep that flame alive?
Well, there's not much else around with it, is there, I guess? So, I would suppose so. I think that's maybe a big reason why Jeopardy's been so successful, is that people enjoy for whatever reason, seeing people who know a lot of that generalized knowledge, and also the thing I always hear is that, hey, I watch Jeopardy every night. I'd be terrible on the show, but it makes my night when I know that one clue, and I'm telling everybody about it the next day.
Jeopardy had become a kind of national campfire of knowledge. No, I mean, it was a time, I know people from all walks of life, they would just stop. And they had to sit there and watch Jeopardy and play along every single night, and I'm talking about decades.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why it's so successful is because it's so interactive, and you don't need to feel like you would win a ton of money if you were on there. You were watching three people who know a lot of things, usually different things, and depending on how the categories fell that night, that would end up being who won. And, just seeing maybe the viewer at home seeing, hey, there's a category I know, that's fantastic. And you never know what's going to come up. It's, there's a wide variety of subjects that are covered. So, you may not do so well in the opera category, but they might have NBA basketball, and that's your thing.
Hollywood has had some movies about game shows. Two movies that pop into my mind, we've got to go back, gee whiz, almost 30 years into the 1990s. One was White Man Can't Jump, where Rosie Perez playing Gloria Clemente ended up being a contestant on Jeopardy, which was kind of her lifelong dream. And then, of course, there was Quiz Show in 1994, I believe, directed by Robert Redford. And that was based on history and had John Turturro in the role of Herbie Stemple and Ralph Fiennes in the role of Charles Van Doren. Are you familiar with both of the movies? Are there any experiences, if you are familiar with the movies, that you can say, yeah, that kind of got the flavor of what it is to be on a game show, or the atmosphere, or are these not, is this just pure Hollywood imagination?
I am familiar with both of them, and I very much enjoyed both movies, but I have a beef with one of them, and one of them helps me out a lot in day-to-day life. So the one I have a beef with is White Men Can't Jump, where, if I remember correctly, she's having Woody Harrelson quiz her on a bunch of categories, which ended up giving a lot of people the impression that they give you things to study before you go on Jeopardy. And I think a part of that is also that, if you don't have the trivia brain, it's just incomprehensible to you that people could know all this stuff. So you figured they must give you a study guide. So that's a big question that anybody who's been on Jeopardy always gets, like, oh, they give you stuff to study, right? No, that's not true. And White Men Can't Jump inadvertently reinforced that misconception. Quiz Show comes in handy a lot because there are numerous federal laws regulating game shows now, which really keep a bright line between anybody who is competing on the show and the writers on the show. For instance, on The Chase, I didn't even know who was writing on the show until I saw the credits. So that's how serious that is. And people are like, oh, wow, you mean you just don't hang out with Alex Trebek? Like, no, he sees the questions, so, your time with him is extremely limited because of federal law. And I always mention quiz shows. Like, remember the quiz show scandals in the 50s? Robert Redford made a movie about it.
Yeah, in terms of stage direction, when you're actually on a show, I remember in Quiz Show, the producer-director was telling the Herbie Stemple character played by John Turturro, who I thought did an excellent job, he would sweat profusely. And I have to imagine, I don't know if for you, Brad, but that, being on a show, knowing you're being watched by millions of people could be, create a lot of nervousness, and some people, when they get nervous, sweat. And I remember them saying to the Herbie Stemple character, dab. Don't wipe, dab. Don't wipe, in terms of all the sweat pooling down from his forehead. Were there stage directions like that? Stand like this, don't stand like that. Look at the camera this way. Hit your mark this way. Dab, don't wipe. How much production goes into how you're presented when you're on a show?
They do most of that in selecting the contestants. If they can kind of tell whether you're going to be too jittery to stay in frame on camera, before you ever get on the show. So there's not much of that, actually, and so these days you're probably not even allowed to take a handkerchief onto the set because you might have something written on it because of Herb Stempel. So, but yes, if you did happen to have a tissue, they would tell you to dab not wipe because of the makeup. But that's about it.
Do you believe that there's anybody who's ever been brought on a show where they said, well, this person really isn't a tremendous master of trivia, and we can't really see them doing overly well, but they've got such a personality that's going to grab the camera and audience, let's put them up there anyway?
I wouldn't think that they would put someone up there like that who they thought had no shot at the trivia part of it, but I could certainly see that that would be maybe the determining factor as to whether somebody who might or might not have it would get on the air.
It's interesting. Beside your mastery of general knowledge, you also have kind of that announcer voice, which I'm sure helps, even though it's a visual medium. But you've got that kind of presence. When you were coming up, when you were thinking about a career before you got into the world of game shows, what was it you focused on? Did you ever focus on a radio show? Did you ever focus on TV, or is this just something that happened?
It's really just something that happened. I'm just a kid from Pennsylvania. Nobody I knew was in show business in any respect. So I guess in high school, when people would call my house, they couldn't tell the difference between my brother and my dad and me. So I guess I have always had the announcer voice, but never really realized that I could do anything with it until after I had already been on Jeopardy.
And you do come from a beautiful part of the country. I come from New York, and I remember on a good number of vacations we went to what, at least at that point in time, was called the Pennsylvania Dutch Country, and that's where you're from, Lancaster, correct?
Yes, and it still is called the Pennsylvania Dutch Country.
Beautiful, beautiful area. And if people haven't made it there, I really suggest. I think Hershey, Pennsylvania is near there, is it not?
It is, yeah, maybe 40 minutes down the road.
And there's a town with an X-rated name.
More than one, if you want to be a little creative.
Yeah, I recall many years ago I was going through there in my car, and I had a CB radio, and as I was passing, I heard truckers calling it one X-rated city. I'll leave the name of the town to people's imagination to keep this family friendly, but quite an area and a great part of the country, and certainly we're glad you could be joining us on CYInterview. Chris?
So, catch Brad Rutter and his fellow Jeopardy champions on The Chase on ABC on Thursday nights. So for accomplished game show contestant Brad Rutter, featured columnist Jay Bilstein, and CYInterview, I'm Christian.